What we do in a courtroom now is I'm going to introduce Judge Rosengart, and he is a judge of the New York State Supreme Court. You'll notice one thing, he does not have a gavel. The gavel is for television. The gavel is used to bring order if your court is not being in order. Most judges keep their court in order. And what he's going to do is listen to you and come up, and each of you will be asked to come up and do a presentation. Simple as that. He will not say to you, stop. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. He will not say to you, by the way, if you knew your law, you would say this instead of that. He wants to hear what you have to say, and he's going to make some comments. As simple as that. Yeah, okay, now we do this. The procedure is when a judge walks into a place, and I want to introduce you to one other person who's here. This young lady, Ms. Terry Bonavolante from Con Edison. She's not here because we have a lighting problem. She is here because Con Edison has given us the funding to operate this program. Okay, and we're very grateful and we operate them. So I'd like you all now rise and like to introduce Judge Roger Rosengart.
Morning, everybody. Please have a seat.
And Your Honor, all of these students here have been with us for the entire semester studying hate crimes, and their final assignment was to prepare cases that had been brought in Queens County under the topic of hate crimes. And each one of them was assigned a unique case, and they will be presenting the overview of their case, what took place during the case, in many cases the outcome of the case, and they will express their feelings about it. So let me call up Zach.
Well, but before you start, I just want to explain a couple of things. The word Supreme Court, we confuse that with the United States Supreme Court. In New York State, the Supreme Court is a trial court of universal jurisdiction, and it has both criminal term and civil term, and I've sat in both. And it's not a court that takes appeals from lower courts. The appeals from the Supreme Court go to the appellate division of the Supreme Court, and above that is the highest court in the state of New York, which is the Court of Appeals, which in a lot of other states is called the Supreme Court of that state. So I just want to eliminate that confusion. Zach, just tell me the name of your case, okay?
My name is Zach, and the case I will be presenting is the people of New York versus Jeremiah Amarillo. Jeremiah Amarillo came up to Said Nakawi and asked him what English he was speaking. Said Nakawi said he was speaking English. He told him, was it English, American, or English? Said Nakawi said, is English is English. After that, Jeremiah Amarillo took a knife, stabbed him in his face, his leg, and also his arm. Said Nakawi was taken to the hospital and he was treated for his injuries. He received 30 stitches in his face, 8 stitches in his arm, and 4 stitches in his leg. However, according to the indictment, Jeremiah Amarillo was charged with assaulting in the first degree as a hate crime, aggravated harassment as a second degree, and criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree. The reason this was processed as a hate crime because of the words Amarillo spoken, and he called Said Nakawi a dumb, stupid Mexican. According to the New York Times on October 30th, 2000, Justice Seymour Radker indicated that he was going to sentence Amarillo to 16 years in lifetime when he pronounced the sentence on October 31st. I have not been able to confirm what was the actual sentence. District Attorney Rickard Brown said that he is pleased with the outcome. The defendant guilt played, and his impending sentence says the time that no crime will be allowed in this country.
Do you know if he was convicted after trial, or did he plead guilty? Do you know?
He pleaded guilty.
He pled guilty,
But
and do you know which count he pled guilty to?
Queens County, I think.
Which count of the indictment?
All of them.
Oh, he had to plead to the entire indictment, and Judge Radker said he would sentence him to 16 to life. This must have been some time ago, of course, 2000, because Judge Radker retired a long time ago. I've known him very well. Do you understand the difference between assault in the first degree or assault in the first degree as a hate crime, what the difference is?
A hate crime is, you approach a person based on his race, religion, or...
But the fact that it's brought as a hate crime by the prosecutor means that there's an enhanced punishment. So what the statute says is that if you are convicted of let's say, a Class B felony, which assault in the first degree would be, you can be sentenced to an enhanced sentence. And under that Class B felony, it would really raise it to an A felony, and he could be sentenced from anywhere up to 25 years to life. So, do you have any questions of me about this?
No, I think the sentence was fair enough, and I agree with you. It should be 25, not 16 years. Thank you so much.
Well, that was in exchange for pleading guilty. If somebody pleads guilty, they can get a lesser sentence. And I want you to know that when the 16 years expires, the person comes before the parole board, so it's up to the parole board whether to release them or not. So they could serve their entire life. Okay? Thank you very much. Nice presentation, Zach. Congratulations.
Anyone like to go next? Anyone? Eric.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
My name is Eric VEHSTEDT, and I will be presenting the case of the people of the state of New York versus Kristen Flores. Mr. Flores.
Let me find him first.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta find the... It's always the one on the bottom, right? I don't even see him here. Well, go ahead, I'm listening.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Flores has been charged with second-degree assault as a hate crime, and criminal possession of a weapon. On August 21st, 2011, Mr. Carlos Elman was walking down the street of 80th Street and 81st Street on Roosevelt Avenue in Jackson Heights. He was walking with his boyfriend, Mr. Juan Diaz, when Mr. Flores and about 3 to 4 others started shouting anti-gay slurs against him. They then proceeded to take off their own shirts and follow the two and began to push them. Mr. Ailman tried to come to the aid of Mr. Diaz by stepping in front of him and Mr. Flores, and that is when Mr. Flores took out a knife and stabbed him in the bicep. Patrolling police in the neighborhood chased Mr. Flores, and Mr. Ailman did as well. He successfully tackled him to the ground, in which then the knife was dropped onto the ground. And Mr. Ailman confirmed that that was the knife he was stabbed with, and Mr. Flores was arrested there. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. He was correctly charged with the hate crime because of the anti-gay slurs that he stated before the assault actually happened. But a couple questions that I have is that it was very peculiar behavior for him and the other 3 or 4 to take off their shirts. So I question whether or not they were drunk or under the influence of any sort of substance. Also, how did he know or perceive Mr. Diaz and Mr. Ailman as being homosexual? Was it because that they showed some sort of affection for each other as a couple, or was it because of the way they dressed or in appearance? I find that significant because I question if Mr. Ailman was walking alone that night, would they still have assaulted him? But nevertheless, it is certainly a hate crime because he showed his discontent for him being a homosexual and decided to act in the way that he did.
Well, you know, one of the indications is, one of the requirements of the statute is that when you're committing the crime against somebody, you're doing it because of their race, religion, sexual orientation or other. Now, you may be mistaken. The person may not be homosexual, but if you attack that person believing he's a homosexual and attack him as a homosexual, the hate crime still lies.
I know. That's why it says perceived.
Perceived, right,
Mm-hmm.
right, okay?
Yes.
You raised the question about perhaps they were drunk.
I do.
Have you looked up anything to do with?
I did. I
intoxication?
couldn't find anything about him being under the influence.
well,
I do want to mention that it was at about 4:30 in the morning, so very early in the morning. So for him to be out at that time certainly implies that he was doing something.
I want you to understand that being drunk does not mitigate.
Oh, absolutely not.
The law tells us that when you drink yourself into a state of drunkenness, you are responsible for that drinking. Therefore, you are responsible for what you do when you're drunk as if you were not drunk.
Yes, absolutely. I
Unless
agree
somebody
with that.
else has forced you into drinking, which is very unusual. Okay?
I just thought it was an interesting question to raise, but
Yeah, it is
I
a
agree.
good question. Okay, and I'm glad you asked it, and you made a very nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good luck to you.
YENO.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is YENO,
Good
and
morning.
the case I'll be presenting is the people of New York versus Stephen Cabreja and Anthony Nieves.
Let me find it first. Actually, if I spread them out here, I have a better chance of finding it, right? I'm sorry. What were their names again?
Stephen Cabreja and Anthony Nieves.
I've got it. Okay. Go ahead.
On October 23rd, 2000, in front of the Pico Pan Bakery on 1520 College Point Boulevard, the defendants, Stephen Cabreja and Anthony Nieves, approached Alec Marino with a knife and asked him to they demanded his phone, and when he refused, they said, "Give it to us, you gay mother," expletive. Yeah, I didn't want to say it. And they called him slurs related to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. And the defendant punched until Alec Marino was bruised and swollen on the left eye, and the other defendant patted his pockets, and there was also an unapprehended suspect who was at the scene and then picked up the wallet and ran away with the two defendants. The charges were robbery in the second degree is a hate crime, robbery in the second degree is a hate crime, robbery in the first degree, robbery in the first degree is a hate crime, robbery in the second degree, robbery in the second degree, assault in the third degree is a hate crime with a DNA sample request, assault in the third degree, DNA sample required upon conviction, and criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree. And one thing about this case is that all the charges were charged as robbery and assault, but as hate crimes. And it says in the report that it was an intentional selection and commission of the crime because of the defendant's sexual orientation, because of the amount of slurs that they used related to his sexuality.
Do you have anything else? Do you know what happened with this case? Because I don't.
I do know that Anthony Nieves was sentenced and he's currently incarcerated. Stephen Cabreja, they didn't have like a public criminal record on him, but Stephen Cabreja is in a federal prison.
Do we know the age, by any chance, of Stephen Cabreja?
I believe Stephen Cabreja was 27 at the
Really?
time. They were fairly young.
Because I can't imagine that there would not be a record unless the case against him, unless he was either acquitted, that means found not guilty, or for some reason the case was dismissed against him, with the possibility that he testified. He may have gotten some kind of preferential treatment if he testified at the trial against Nieves. So do you know anything about that, if that happened or not?
What happened is the other defendant patted him down when the crime occurred. All he did was, after they all had knives,
Yeah.
one punched him
Yeah.
and assaulted him. The other patted him down for the BlackBerry phone.
Yeah.
And then the last person picked up what was thrown. He threw his items on the street because He probably wanted them to stop, and then the unknown assailant just snatched what was on the floor and left. The first defendant did most of the assault, and the second one just kind of searched him, so he didn't really
Okay, so that's probably
physically attack him.
Mr. Cabrera. Do you know what the conviction was, if it was robbery in the first degree or robbery in the second degree? Do you know?
I believe the conviction was robbery, like in the second degree, as a hate crime, because he was sentenced to like prison. So, you know,
there is a difference. Robbery in the first degree is usually with a weapon or when somebody gets injured. Robbery in the second degree is when it's more than one person is stealing from you and threatens the use of physical force. And robbery in the second degree is a Class C felony, and robbery in the first degree is a Class B felony. The C felony, you can get up to 15 years, and the B felony, you can get up to 25 years. But if it's enhanced as a hate crime, then the sentence can be greater. Okay? You got any questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing we learned is that hate crimes in New York were changed to felony sentencing.
Yeah.
So, like, how many years would just a hate crime alone get, even if it didn't involve like robbery and assault? Like, how many additional?
It depends. What it basically says is, the statute on hate crimes says that if you're convicted of anything as a hate crime, it elevates it one level. So if you get convicted of a misdemeanor, say a Class A misdemeanor, which is you can get a year in prison or a $1,000 fine, if you're convicted of it as a hate crime, it becomes a Class E felony. It's no longer a misdemeanor, you now become a convicted felon, and you could get up to 4 years in prison. And all the way up the line, a Class D felony, you could get up to 7 years, but if it's a hate crime, it becomes a C felony, you can get up to 15, and C and B and A and so on and so forth, until it comes up to possible you could get 25 years to life.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice presentation. Congratulations.
Ariel?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Ariel Montgomery. The
Nice to
case
meet
I
you.
will be presenting today is the People of New York versus David C. Wood.
Against who?
David C. Wood.
I saw that here just a minute. I just want to look at it. While I'm looking at it, go ahead. I'm looking for it. Go ahead. Don't want to hold you up.
David Wood was charged with 7 counts. 2 counts of assault in the second degree as a hate crime, 1 assault in the second degree, 2 counts of assault in the third degree as a hate crime, 1 assault in the third degree, and 1 aggravated harassment in the second degree. On Monday, January 14, 2008, Baljit Shadha was assaulted at 222-34 95th Avenue in Queens, New York. At approximately 5:34 p.m., Baljit Shadha was approached by David C. Wood, who yelled at him, "You effing Arab, go back to your country." After Shadha ignored his rude remark, Mr. Wood approached him again and stated, "You don't listen?" Mr. Shadha was then assaulted by the defendant, Mr. Wood, who punched him in the face, causing his nose and jaw to break. As a result of the assault, Mr. Shadha had surgery to repair his nose and required further medical assistance with his jaw when the swelling ceased. Mr. Shadha was placed on a liquid diet as well. Mr. Wood was facing 15 years to life and was held on a $10,000 bail. He had court on January 30th to hear his sentence. I was not able to find any more information about neither the trial nor verdict. But in my opinion, he deserved the highest degree of penalty. No one deserves to be harmed or harassed because of someone's beliefs or opinion. Most of these accusations are false. All human beings should be comfortable walking down the street without fear. I was not able to find his sentence, but the victim suffered physical and mental harm, and the defendant deserves the highest penalty, and he should be responsible for the victim's medical course.
That's
it.
Done? Very good. Okay. Since we don't know what happened here, we do know that he was indicted. He was indicted for assault in the second degree as a hate crime. Now, assault in the second degree is a class, I believe it's a class C felony. It may be a D. But that requires, the definition of assault in the second degree is when somebody with the intent to cause serious physical injury to somebody causes serious physical injury. Now, in this case, the fact that there was a broken nose and a broken jaw, that does constitute serious physical injury. So there was enough evidence to convict him of that assault in the second degree, which requires that serious physical injury. And the fact that he uttered what he said turns it into a hate crime, which would elevate it to another level. So instead of being a Class D felony, it becomes a Class C felony, which he could be, depending on his past record. If he had no prior record, he could be sentenced to up to 15 years. Minimum of, I believe it's a minimum of 6, maybe less, I'm not sure. That may be for the B felony. Okay, so I can assure you that he got what he deserved. Unless he pled guilty, he may have gotten a little less. Okay? Any questions?
It says that the defendant was 36 and Shadha was 63. So could that have affected a hate crime as well, since the age difference?
When somebody is over a certain age, they also are considered a special victim. But he didn't say anything about him being old. So if he has said, I hate old people, therefore I'm going to, then that becomes another classification. It will be a double hate crime. But I don't think they could have indicted him for hate and hate. Only one. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Very good presentation.
Jalesa.
Hi, good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is JALESA HARPER. The case I will be presenting today is New York versus Paul Heavy.
I've got him here. Let me find him a second. I know I've seen him. Where are you? Ah, got him. Okay.
The defendant, Mr. Heavy, has been charged with 4 counts. Assault in the second degree as a hate crime, assault in the third degree as a hate crime, reckless endangerment in the second degree as a hate crime, and criminal mischief in the fourth degree as a hate crime. Paul Heavy also had an accomplice with him named Kevin Brown. The 3 men, and another Chinese American friend, all 19, were riding in the victim Reynolds Lynn car in Douglaston when Kevin Brown and Paul Heavy pulled up in the Toyota and screamed, "Get out of the neighborhood," and used the racial slur. I believe the racial slur was a gook. Lynn's car tried to get away, but the Toyota followed the Lexus down 44th Avenue and Douglaston Parkway. When Brown, 19, and Heavy, 20, got out and attacked one of Lynn's friends when he went to view the car to see if it was damaged. Lynn was badly beaten in the head and chest with his own steering wheel lock when he tried to come for his friend's rescue. The Queens DA charged Kevin Brown and Paul Heavy with assault, reckless endangerment, and criminal mischief and alleged taunting 4 Chinese American with racial slur and beaten 2 of them. Both defendants were arraigned in criminal Queens Criminal Court. Mr. Brown's bail was set at $30,000 bonds or $20,000 cash, and Mr. Heavy's bail was set in $10,000 bail. I believe these two were totally wrong, and no one should be afraid to hang out and have to watch over their back because of their ethnic backgrounds.
Do you know what happened with the case?
The guys,
Well, as to Mr. Heavey, we don't know about.
yeah, no. Yeah, that's what it said when I Googled him. But also they said that Kevin Brown, lawyer, said that it was like a traffic accident with the damage of the car. So he tried to make it seem like he wasn't damaging anything. But after, as of Mr. Heavy, they didn't say anything about him being indicted.
Well, you can see he was prosecuted on a Superior Court information. Did you get that? Yeah. All right. What a Superior Court information, it replaces an indictment. And that usually comes about because of plea bargaining before the case is presented to the grand jury, at which time the defendant agrees to plead guilty to a felony or even a misdemeanor. And in this case, although, just for your clarification, for everybody's clarification, although in the criminal court complaint he's charged with assault in the second degree as a hate crime, as well as assault in the third degree as a hate crime, I hope you'll recall what I said before about serious physical injuries. The complainant here did not suffer serious physical injury, he suffered physical injury, which was some lacerations, bruising and swelling, tenderness and pain about the face and body. That does not come up to the standard of serious physical injury. That's a physical injury, which comprises assault in the third degree, which is a Class A misdemeanor, not a felony. But since on the Superior Court information, it says he's accused of the crime of assault in the third degree as a hate crime, that now becomes a Class E felony. And I'm going on an assumption, based on my experience in the court, that this Superior Court information was drafted because he agreed to plead guilty to this, and he probably did plead guilty to this. And he could have gotten 6 months and probation, or he could have gotten anything up to 4 years, somewhere in that area. So, any questions?
No, that'll be all.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Okay. Farzanah.
Good afternoon. My name is Farzanah.
Could you pull the mic down a little so we can hear you better? That's it. Okay.
My name is Farzanah Siddiqui, and I will be presenting the case, the people of the state of New York versus Jeffrey Cardenas.
Let me find him a minute. Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
okay. On March 28, 2011, between the times of 3:05 a.m. and 3:17 a.m., the victim, Mr. Angel Noyola, was attacked on 75th, 12 Broadway, Queens, New York, by the defendant, Mr. Jeffrey Cardenas. The officer on the scene was Police Officer Ariel, who, after being duly sworn, explained the charges held against the defendant. The officer was informed by the victim that the defendant Cardenas punched him several times and stated, "You faggot." The victim also pointed out that because of the punches, there was swelling on the right side of his face, as well as the bloody nose. The officer was also confirmed that he saw the bloody nose and the swelling. The defendant also stated in sum and substance, "He asked me for sex, that is why I hit him. I don't play with that gay shit," which kind of sums up that it was a hate crime, since he, because of his basis of attacking was because he believed that Mr. Noyola was gay. The charges held against the defendant was assault in the third degree as a hate crime, assault in the third degree, and harassment in the second degree. So after doing research, I didn't find much because his case was really small.
Okay. Well, once again, this was prosecuted after the criminal court on the Superior Court information, which probably means he pled guilty to assault in the third degree as a hate crime, which that was the only charge lodged in the Superior Court information, which replaces an indictment and allows the person to be prosecuted in the Superior Court, which is the Supreme Court. And he probably pled guilty and probably got a sentence, something, as I said on the case before, 6 months in probation for 5 years, or some kind of jail term, actually state prison term. He could have gotten up to 4 years.
He could have, because it's already, as just assault, it's a misdemeanor.
Right.
But because it was a hate crime, it went up to
An E felony, Class E felony, correct.
Class E felony.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right, thank you, good job, nice work.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is RASHAWN HOPWOOD, and the case I'll be presenting today is the people of New York versus Dario Reed Sr. and Dario Reed Jr.
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
On the afternoon of November 23, 2009, in an apartment complex on 104th, 175th Street in Jamaica, Queens, Marcus Devereaux was calling out to a maintenance worker in his apartment, which is when Dario Reed Sr. came out to him and objected. The two later got into a verbal argument in which Dario Reed Sr. began to call Mr. Devereaux a faggot. After an hour, Mr. Devereaux came back and tried to call the maintenance worker again, but yet again, Dario Reed Sr. came back and antagonized Mr. Devereaux. That is when Dario Reed Sr. got into a physical conflict with Mr. Devereaux by dragging him into the hallway near his apartment, and then he called for his son Dario Reed Jr. The two began to beat on Mr. Devereaux, which resulted in the two began to beat on Mr. Devereaux, and
Relax.
Sorry. Okay. Dario Reed Jr. held down Mr. Devereaux as Dario Reed Sr. took a knife and stabbed Mr. Devereaux in the leg and cut his face. Then, after that, Dario Reed Sr. called 911 and told the operator that he was threatening to kill Mr. Devereaux and constantly called him a faggot. Mr. Devereaux was rushed to the hospital with lacerations on his legs and his face. He needed 10 stitches on his leg, and he had to get a liquid bandage for his face. The charges against Dario Reed Sr. and Dario Reed Jr. is assault in the second degree as a hate crime, menacing in the second degree as a hate crime, criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree, and criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree. The reasons that assault in degree and menacing in degree was a hate crime was because of how many times Mr. Devereaux and Mr. Reed and his son called Mr. Devereaux a faggot. Later, on January 26, 2011, Dario Reed Sr. was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison plus 5 years post supervision, while his son later received the sentence in May of that year. I couldn't find his sentence.
Uh-huh. Do you know how old he was?
Dario Reed was 40. Dario Reed Sr. was 46, and his son was 20 at the time of the attack. I believe that the sentence was justified because I have a family member who's openly gay, and he went through the same similar situation since he was attacked, and I feel that nobody should be persecuted for the way they should live.
Okay, thank you. Incidentally, the assault in the second degree is I believe, a Class D felony. With the hate crime, it comes up to a C felony, and there's a minimum of, I believe, 3.5 years, and it could be up to 15. So he probably pled guilty, I'm not sure. Do you know if he went to trial or pled guilty?
Oh, yes. Daria Reed Sr. actually pled guilty to all the charges.
Okay.
And one question I was confused about
Sure.
is that
I hope I can answer it.
Daria Reed Sr. and his son received menacing in the second degree as a count, but only Daria Reed Sr. received a menacing in the second degree as a hate crime. But didn't they both call him anti-gay slurs during the attack?
Yeah, that's probably a mistake on behalf of the district attorney's office, but it's really a lesser crime than assault. They have the serious crime of assault, and usually once they get through the assault, if they're convicted of assault, whatever lesser crime that happened at the same time, the sentence has to run together, what we call concurrently, so they can't enhance the punishment anymore because of the menacing. Menacing is like when you're placing somebody in fear, you're going to assault them. And assault is when you actually insult them. So it's really part and parcel of the same thing. So it's not a big deal. Okay?
All right.
Anything else you want to know?
No.
Okay, congratulations, nice job. I hope you enjoyed it.
Destiny?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Destiny Najora. The case I will be presenting today is the People of New York versus John Moderno.
John Moderno, let me find him. And you can relax and slow down a little, it's okay. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Moderno was charged with 7 counts. He was charged with criminal mischief in the 3rd degree as a hate crime, criminal mischief in the 3rd degree as a hate crime again, criminal mischief in the 3rd degree, criminal mischief in the 3rd degree, endangering the welfare of a child, and aggravated harassment in the 2nd degree. He had 4 different victims: Ida Rios, Raymond Blackquire, and Ricardo and Ruby Castro. In May, he on Miss Rios' way to work, he yelled, "You fucking Puerto Rican bitch, go back. You don't belong here." Then he threw a box of pasta at her head out of anger, and he dented her car with his fist. And in September, he smashed her windshield and smashed her tires, causing $250 in damage. In October, he broke Raymond Blackquire's windshield and both his side windows, costing again $250 in damage. In September, he was harassing Ruby Castro. He said, "You fucking Puerto Rican, I'm gonna fuck you up." And he harassed her by trying to block her path and tried to grab her arms as she ran past. And I couldn't find information about the trial.
Pardon?
I couldn't find any information about the trial.
Okay, well you can see by the papers that he was indicted for these charges. And the indictment, I don't know what date it was handed down, so how long ago was this? This is a long time ago, in 2006, so I assume the case has been disposed of. Although sometimes it takes a long time. It's very possible that he had a mental problem and they did a mental examination of him, and at which time it's determined whether he's able or unable to stand trial. And if he's so crazy that he's unable to stand trial, then they will put him in a mental hospital until he is able to stand trial, and then he would stand trial. That could be why you didn't find anything here. We really don't know. But you understand that the crime of criminal mischief in the 3rd degree, which I believe is a, I made a note of it here. What did I do with it? Which I believe is an E felony. If it's done as a hate crime, it's up 1 level to a D felony. So where he would have been facing 4 years, he will now be facing 7 years. Endangering the welfare of a child is a Class A misdemeanor. Aggravated harassment in the second degree, I think, is also a misdemeanor. So he would have 2 counts of hate crimes of the criminal mischief. But since they occurred on 2 different dates, it's very possible that if he were tried and found guilty of both counts, that he could get consecutive sentences. So it could be up to 7 years on each one to run consecutively, so he could end up getting up to 14 years. Well, that probably would not happen, but it's a possibility. You got any questions, me?
No.
All right, nice job, thank you.
SARIEU?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is SARIEU Samo. The case I will be presenting today is the people of New York versus Armando Yucca and Brian Uwald.
Let me find him a second. Got him. Okay, go ahead, thank you.
Both defendants were charged with 1 count of assault in the second degree as a hate crime, 3 counts of assault in the third degree as a hate crime, 1 count of menacing in the second degree as a hate crime, and 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree. At approximately 12:30 a.m. on June 10, 2006, at the intersection of 34th Street and Broadway in Queens, New York, the victim, Carlos Morris, who was African American, walked down the street past a group of 8 white males. Armando Yucca and Brian Uwald were a part of this group. The group yelled at him, calling him a faggot and the N-word. They then proceeded to assault him by punching him in the face and kicking him to the ground. Mr. Morris was also accompanied by 2 other men, Joseph Moran and Ronald Zaki, who were also attacked by the men. The 3 victims were able to break free. While they were fleeing, Mr. Morris was hit across the back of the head with a baseball bat and knocked down. As the victims continued to flee, the defendants continued to call Mr. Morris the N-word and a faggot. Mr. Morris was hospitalized for injuries to his head and hand. According to QGazette.com, on October 26, 2010, both Armando Yucca and Brian Uwald were convicted of assault in the second degree as a hate crime, 3 counts of assault in the third degree as a hate crime, and criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree. I could not find any information on their sentencing, but on February 21, 2012, Armando Yucca tried to appeal his case but was denied. I feel that the charges and the conviction were justified because the victims did not do anything to deserve this attack. They did not provoke these men at all. As soon as the defendants saw the victims, they made it clear that they had hate and ill intentions. The crime was clearly a hate crime because before the defendants began their attack, they used the words nigger and faggot as an insult when referring to the victim. According to the hate crimes law, crimes are prosecutable as hate crimes if they are committed in whole or part because a person belongs to or is perceived to belong to one of the protected classes, which includes race and sexual orientation. This crime definitely falls under that category.
Very good. And I'm glad you understand the definition and you stated it very clearly. And you can tell since this person took an appeal in 2012, he's probably still in jail, still in state prison. So I assume they got convicted of the Class C felony and got a minimum of 6 and probably 6 to 15 years, something like that. So nice job. Any questions? Good job. Well done. Thank you.
Blanca?
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Can you pull the mic down a
Ladies.
little bit? There you go.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Blanca Mata. The case I will be presenting today is the people of the state of New York versus Daniel Aleman Jr. and Daniel Rodriguez.
Okay. Slow it down a little. I know you're talking fast because you're nervous. Relax, okay? Good. Go ahead.
I will now explain what happened to the persons involved in this case. On October 8, 2009, Daniel Aleman and Daniel Rodriguez brutally attacked Jack Price at about 4:30 a.m. in front of 1802 College Point Boulevard, who was 49 years old at the time in the act of hate. Jack Price is an openly gay man who was walking home after buying cigarettes at his local deli on the corner of College Point Boulevard and 118th Avenue, when two men, in this case Mr. Aliman and Mr. Rodriguez, approached him and shouted anti-gay slurs, such as calling him a faggot. They then proceeded to beat him up and take his belongings, leaving Jack Price suffer from a broken jaw, broken ribs, 2 collapsed lungs, and a lacerated spleen. The defendant, Daniel Rodriguez, has been charged with robbery in the first degree as a hate crime, robbery in the second degree as a hate crime, assault in the second degree as a hate crime. The defendant, Daniel Aliman, has been charged with assault in the second degree as a hate crime. The defendant, Daniel Rodriguez, pleaded guilty to first-degree robbery as a hate crime, and Daniel Aliman was held on a $20,000 bail while charges against Rodriguez were pending. Unlike other hate crime cases, the uniqueness in this case was that a video was available for evidence. There was a surveillance camera from the store Jack Price was shopping at that recorded the whole thing. In the video, you can see a taxi cab pass by without stopping. Daniel Aliman and Daniel Rodriguez said they supposedly saw Jack Price preparing to do graffiti on the wall, and were disgusted because they knew he was going to put contact information for gay sex on the wall, something like "for a good time, call Jack." According to ABC News, Jack Price left the hospital following 6 days in a coma, 6 days on a respirator, and 4 surgeries. He lost his vision in one eye. Daniel Rodriguez's sister told Fox News that Daniel is innocent because he himself has gay relatives and even once had a gay roommate. During the case was being investigated, Daniel Rodriguez was caught saying Jack Price called that assault upon himself. Daniel Aliman implicated himself, saying he simply joined in on the assault for no good reason. He said, "Me being stupid ass took a couple cheap shots on the white guy." Keep in mind that this is a case about a hate crime. For a crime to be considered a hate crime, a person must commit an offense and either intentionally commit the act or select the person because of a belief regarding the race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion practice, age, disability, gender, religion, or sexual orientation of a person, regardless whether or not the belief is correct. Okay. As a result of the trial, Daniel Rodriguez was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and Daniel Aliman was sentenced 8 years in prison. I feel the outcome of the trial was handled seriously by the County of Queens and in a timely manner. Jack Price suffered from serious damage, needed medical treatment, and went into a coma on his hospital bed. The man was nearly close to death but survived. By taking the case seriously, they show the LGBTQ community that they are protected.
Okay, very good job. So they went to trial and they were found guilty by a jury?
Yes.
Okay. And for some reason, Aliman was the one who said, "I just joined in."
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got less time.
He got less, yeah.
The judge gave him less time. And usually after the time that they're given, it includes a period of supervision or parole. So they could be under Department of Correction or Probation Department or Parole Division supervision for a long, long time, longer than they're in jail. Okay? You have any questions?
Yeah. You said robbery in the first degree is when a weapon is involved?
Yes.
Yeah, Daniel Rodriguez was charged with that, but I didn't find any weapon on
Well, robbery in the first degree can also be when you cause a serious physical injury to somebody. Okay, and that's what they did here. There's no doubt they caused a serious physical injury. In fact, let's look at the indictment, see what it says for the robbery in the first degree.
They have 14 counts.
Yeah, I know. Let's see. Robbery in the second degree, robbery in the second. See, here it says the defendants each aiding the other on or about October 8, 2009 in the County of Queens forcibly stole certain property, personal property from Jack Price, and in the course of the commission of the crime or immediate flight therefrom, the defendants caused serious physical injury to Jack Price. So that's a separate subsection of robbery in the first degree. So it can be either with a weapon or can also be causing serious physical injury. That's why it was robbery in the first degree, which is a Class B felony. And I don't know if they called that as a hate crime. They didn't charge that as a hate crime. They could have, but they didn't. But assault in the first degree as a hate crime is the same thing. So they could have been sentenced as Class A felons, but they were sentenced as Class B. Okay? Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Finalists?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jenny Cintron, and my case is the people of the state of New York against Arcadius Marcas and Whitehall Ivanzik.
Okay.
What happened was, it was the middle of the night, and both defendants broke into the victim's home, and the victim told them to please leave, and that he would not call the police. They refused, and they began to instead they hurled ethnic slurs and made racial charged gestures, such as the Hitler, like salute, yeah, the Nazi salute, yeah. Seconds later, the victims came. The victim ran to the kitchen. Both defendants followed him to the kitchen, and they punched him in his face. And Walter, one of the defendants, began sexually harassing him, touching him, assuming he was gay. The victim, they both grabbed the victim's genitals and ripped his underwear off. Police said that the victim managed to break free again and eventually make his way out of the apartment, where he called 911. That was the information given. Walter was found guilty. They were both found. One of them was found guilty in the following counts. It was burglary in the first degree as a hate crime, burglary in the first degree, robbery in the first degree as a hate crime, robbery in the first degree, assault in the first degree as a hate crime, and assault in the first degree, robbery in the second degree as a hate crime, robbery in the second degree, assault in the second degree as a hate crime, assault in the second degree, sexual abuse in the first degree as a hate crime, sexual abuse in the first degree, criminal mischief in the fourth degree as a hate crime, and criminal mischief in the fourth degree.
So they were convicted of almost everything they got indicted for, is that correct? And was that after trial?
Yeah.
And do you know what their sentences were?
I know one that was for 15 years.
15?
Yeah, which was Mark Gatz, 15.
And I'm sure the other got at least the same. Okay. Once again, burglary in the first degree is a Class B felony. Was a hate crime, it's enhanced to a higher degree of crime, could be sentenced as a Class A felon. Do you know if the sentence was 15 years to life or just 15 years?
Since Walter was the one that began doing the sexual harassment, was like 14 to life.
14 to life.
Yeah, right. The first one didn't. It was just
so they were sentenced as Class A felons because of the increment of the crime as a hate crime. So they could end up, depending how they do, in prison for life, and they probably deserve it. Okay. Any questions? So
was it told like a hate on hate? Because first they were being hateful, the fact that he was Jewish, but they were going against it because he was gay. Is that hate on hate, or just like one case?
Well, it's really, as a hate crime, as a hate crime. As I said before, if there's two reasons for the hating, it's still, you can't increase it more than one level. So it makes no difference. Hate is hate, whether it's one hates, two hates, or three hates. Okay? All right? Thank you. Good job.
ZULFIQAR.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is ZULFIQAR Ali.
Good afternoon.
And the case I will be presenting today is People of New York versus Franco Rodriguez.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Do you have it? Late 2011, Queens County went through a spree of anti-Semitic graffiti violence, which led to a huge outcry for the New York police to find the criminals. After a surveillance video was found, Franco, age 40, was identified as the main suspect. The defendant was charged with criminal mischief in third degree as a hate crime, criminal mischief in the fourth degree as a hate crime, aggravated harassment in the first degree for making anti-Semitic graffiti. It is believed the defendant damaged property in spite of revenge because he said he was being harassed by the Jewish people. A synagogue, a church, and a library were his main targets.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Jews attended the church he attacked, right?
Yeah, and it was the surveillance was given by the father of the church. Franco said he was being harassed by the Jewish people, and he did it as revenge. So whenever he went somewhere where he saw surveillance cameras, he would spray them, so he would get away with it. He did anti-Semitic signs like the swastika on all these buildings. At first, Franco pleaded not guilty, but as the sentence, as the trial progressed, he confessed that he did all the crimes.
Did he plead guilty?
He later on he confessed, so he pleaded guilty.
Do you know
but
what?
I wasn't able to find, like, there was a bail for 5,000 that I know, but I wasn't able to find if he was sentenced.
Do you know what he pled guilty to?
He pled guilty to all the 12 counts.
Yeah. So all of these counts really, the criminal mischief counts are misdemeanors, but as hate crimes they are elevated, and so is the aggravated harassment. They will be elevated to a Class E felony, and he could have gotten anywhere from up to 1 1/3 to 4 years in prison. Okay? Any questions? Okay, thank you. Good job.
Tatiana?
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Tatiana Espinosa.
Good morning.
The case I will be presenting today is the people of New York versus Alvis Danjanovic.
Okay. Go ahead.
In the afternoon of August 13, 2006, a man was arrested for spewing anti-Semitic insults and attacking 2 men at the Empire Deli, located at the 75th Austin Street, Forest Hill. The victims involved respond to the names of Michael Merkovich and Anthony Ferraro. In that day, they were both at the deli when the defendant, Elvis Danjanovic, approached the victim, Michael Merkovich, demanding to know if he was a Jewish and ordered him to leave the store by telling him, "We don't want your kind here." Once the victim, Merkovich, confirmed that he was a Jewish, the defendant immediately attacked him, Danjanovic punching several times in the face and head until he knocked him to the ground. Then the defendant began to kick Merkovich in the head and torso. The victim, Merkovich, suffered multiple bruises and swelling in the face and head. The defendant, Elvis Danjanovic, also attacked another man on the same day and at the same place. The name of the second victim is Anthony Ferraro. The defendant approached Ferraro with several others, demanding to know if he was a Jewish. Even though the victim wasn't a Jewish, the defendant, Danjanovic, proceeded to beat him and kick him. The complaining Ferraro could escape from the scene. However, the victim ended up with a broken left hand, as well as bruises and swelling. The defendant, Elvis Danjanovic, was accused for assault in the 2nd degree and assault in the 3rd degree. Both charges were classified as hate crimes, since the greatest motive that led the defendant to attack both men was his rejection towards the Jewish community. In addition, there was a videotape of the inside of the Empire Deli that confirms what happened. In my opinion, this unfortunate incident causes a huge impact, not just in the victims' lives, but in the entire community. I couldn't find any information if he was...
Well, you can see that he was charged on a superior court information, not an indictment, which means he agreed to plead guilty. usually to the Superior Court information before the case was sent to a grand jury. And he was under that Superior Court information. It was assault in the third degree as a hate crime, which makes it an E felony, and he could have gotten 1 1/3 years to 4. We don't know what happened. As to what happened with Mr. Ferraro, he could have been prosecuted for assault in the second degree because he caused him, I think, some broken bones, and that would have been a higher charge. But they only prosecuted it as to the case against Mr. Merkovich. So that's probably what happened. He could have gotten 6 months in probation for 5 years. He could have gotten 1 1/3 to 4 years or something like that as a Class E felony. Assuming that they did this, he probably had no prior record. Okay, nice job. Any questions?
Yeah, do you believe he probably went to jail maybe 15 years? Because I found that...
No, he couldn't have gone to jail for 15 years on this charge.
No, even for both of them?
Assault in the third degree is a Class A misdemeanor, which is you can only get 1 year for. By making it a hate crime, by charging it as a hate crime, it jumps it 1 up, so it will become a Class E felony. And you can't get more than 4 years for an E felony. Okay?
Oh, because I found in in the, which was it, in a website, the Queens District Attorney Richard stated that the suspect could face up to 15 years in prison.
He could have, I think, on the original charges that were in the criminal court complaint. Let me look at them again. Let's see. Since there were two separate victims. Assault in the second degree, assault in the second degree is a hate crime, and assault in the third degree is a hate crime. As assault in the second degree is a hate crime, could be a Class C felony, which he could get up to 15 years. But he was really only down the road prosecuted for assault in the third degree as a hate crime. Okay? Answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Nice job. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Banambati, and I will be presenting today the case, The People versus Richard Kaladi.
Good morning. Go ahead.
It's afternoon.
Good, yeah, it's afternoon.
Okay, so Richard Kaladi was charged with assault in second degree as a hate crime, assault in third degree as a hate crime, and criminal possession of a weapon in fourth degree, harassment in second degree. This crime took place on October 14, 2012 at 3:45 in Crooks Bar, where Richard Kaladi approached Christine and Daryl Carolot. Yes, Christine and Daryl Carolot, and he stated some racial comments saying, "Who are you to bring a N in this bar?" And then saying, when Daryl approached him, he said, "Yeah, there is a problem. Take your fat ass B and your other B and get your black some crap out of here." And then, so he was being racial towards both of the victims. So there were 3 people involved. 3 were victims: Daryl Carrots, Rosemary Powell, and Christine Carrots. Christine was punched by Richard Kaladi as well as Rosemary Powell. When they were exiting the bar, all 3 of them together, Richard came with several people, and Christine and Daryl were held down and punched repeatedly. Then Richard decided to go grab a bottle, a green bottle, and he approached Daryl to hit him with the bottle. He caused a laceration on Daryl's hand, but there was nothing serious done. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
So his girlfriend fought, but Daryl didn't fight with Richard Kaladi.
That's what he said.
Yes.
Right? And you can see that he was then charged with a superior court information. Right?
Mm-hmm. That
And
means he pled guilty.
I assume, yeah. Do you know what the result was?
No, I tried to search it online, but I couldn't find anything.
Okay, well, he was the superior court information contained the charges assault in the second degree without being a hate crime, which is a Class D felony, and an assault in the third degree, a Class A misdemeanor. So even so, assault in the second degree is a Class D felony. He could have gotten up to 7 years in state prison, anything from probation to 7 years. But it's a violent, and he would be being marked for life as a felony offender, having a felony conviction. This is obviously a plea agreement. This was done before the case was presented to the grand jury, and he got punished. He probably had no record prior, that's why. Okay, you have any questions?
Yes. Do you think it benefits, whenever hate crimes come to the court, do you think it benefits them to punish these people by just sending them to jail? Because don't you think that them sitting in a cell is just gonna make them feel more rage growing towards these people instead of being able to understand them in a better way?
You may be very right there. You may be very right. And in some cases, it could make it worse. But a lot of people can be educated while in jail. Some people become model prisoners. Some people even get law degrees while they're in prison. So hopefully when somebody is in jail, they have time to think about what they did. Hopefully they have some kind of education system that can educate them. And hopefully if it's one of these cases where he got a short jail time followed by probation, the probation department would require him to go to some kind of therapy where you learn about different people and how we're all human beings, and no matter how different we are, we're all the same. Hopefully, but you may have a point there. But you know, sometimes the state has to be firm, and you must punish. Okay?
All right, thank you.
It depends. Okay, thank you.
I think that was the last case.
Okay.
If I can.
Yes.
I have a question that I think all the students want me to ask.
I hope he's not going to embarrass me.
Where is
Yes.
your gavel?
My gavel? I have 2 gavels. They were both given to me as gifts when I became a judge. I've never used them. I never had a gavel in the courtroom. I've always found if you treated the lawyers before you as professionals and courteously, you got that courtesy back the same way. So I never really had to use a gavel in a courtroom. And I'm a pretty big guy, and when you're standing up on the bench higher up and you stand up, you look even bigger. So I guess I had kind of a threatening demeanor. When somebody got out of hand, I would just stand up very tall and say, "You're treading on thin ice." And the behavior would automatically stop. And I've had times with juries where a lawyer gets out of hand, and I would say to the jurors something to embarrass the lawyer, and it would stop immediately, because this is mainly in civil cases. Some things like, this attorney's behavior or what he's saying is not evidence in this case, it's only evidence of his bad manners, you know, and things like that. And that's how you keep the lawyers in line, and that's how I did it throughout my career. And happy to say I never held anybody in contempt, not a lawyer anyway. I may have held somebody in contempt for not paying a fine or something along those lines. Somebody's phone's ringing. It's mine. Okay. It's stopped. Okay. Anybody have any questions of me?
Yes.
Yes.
I was thinking of a question, because the most common thing in hate crimes are when people use slurs against those protected classes, or they say something related to the class that makes it hateful.
If it's combined with the crime, that's what turns it into a hate crime.
And followed by the crime makes it a hateful crime.
Right.
Because a lot of people believe, like, because they have freedom of speech, they can say what they want to say.
That's true.
But like when they act on it in a criminal way, that's what makes it a crime against that woman.
It's not a crime to hate. unfortunately. It's morally bankrupt to hate somebody because of what they are, but it's not a crime to. But if you hate somebody and you express that hate and then commit a crime because of that hate, then it becomes a hate crime. And in that way, our state tries to keep hate in check. So keeping hate in check, hopefully things that happened like in the Ottoman Empire with the Armenians in the First World War, what happened to the Ukrainians during the Stalin's time, what happened in the rape of Nanking in World War II, what happened in Cambodia more recently, and more recently in Bosnia and Rwanda and Darfur, and what happened in World War II to the Jews and other people will not happen again. It can't possibly happen in New York State because we nip it in the bud, okay? And it's probably very similar through most of the states. But you know, there's a lot of people who hate. And unless they can learn not to hate, these things will continue to happen. But at least in our state, we try to keep it in check. And one of the things the young lady asked me, wouldn't it be better to educate a person? But sometimes you have to punish them as an example to everybody else, that if you hate and you carry out your hate to harm somebody, you're going to be punished. So that example has to be set sometimes. Okay? Anybody have any other questions?
Well,
okay.
Well, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much for your good work.
Before you go, a personal comment to my interns here. This class met every Thursday at 8 o'clock in the morning. Probably the most undesirable time for any class ever to be held at 8 in the morning. And I used to sit there and say, are these students listening to anything? I'm saying, you know, it's tough at 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I didn't even want to be there. It was the only open time we had. And I said to myself, are these students listening to what I'm saying? Are they connecting? Do they understand? And I want you to know how really proud I am of you today that you got up, you got this information, you went out, you're dressed better than I've ever seen any group of students on campus ever come in here, and came in and really got up there with a certain amount of poise and doing it. And it's very intimidating to get up here and speak before a New York State Supreme Court judge. You notice we tried to make it look like a courtroom, okay? But it's very, very gratifying. I want to thank you so much for that. I also want to thank Professor Rosen and Professor Akers, who were here all the time with us. Now, also, in order to make it official, I'd like you to all come up. We're going to take a group shot with Judge Rosengarten, and we will have these emailed to you, okay? Your Honor, Professor Rosen, Professor Akers,